Well, welcome everybody. My name is Jan McVarish. I'm the Education and Events Director of the Free Speech Union. Welcome to all of you here in London at the Lola's Bar at the Hippodrome and at Leicester Square. Hopefully you've been enjoying your welcome drinks. Hopefully you realise that there were welcome drinks. They're over in the corner over there, courtesy of Ben Dello and Jeremy Hildreth, who regularly help us hydrate our guests. And also, some of you hopefully will take advantage of the discount that the Hippodrome offers in their restaurants if you want to go and eat after the event. They've got a really good Chinese restaurant just opposite this room. And then upstairs there's a steak bar as well. So and they're open really late. So do take advantage of that. So welcome also to the over 250 people who are joining online. A very popular event for us. So tonight's no-brainer question is, does publishing have a freedom of expression problem? I feel obliged to pose it as a rhetorical question, but I think we all know the answer. So we've all become used to hearing about trigger warnings, and today it was Chaucer. I can't remember the university it was now, but because potentially there could be Christian themes there, which students ought to know about in case they're offended. We're used to hearing about sensitivity readers who check for characters wearing inappropriate sombreros or something similar. And I've also become used to hearing about that this book or that book could never get published today. And those are often treated as quite sort of light-hearted stories, oh, would you believe it? But actually, there's obviously a very, very serious story going on behind the scenes here, and something that cumulatively has an incredibly powerful effect, an inhibiting effect, and a dumbing effect on us culturally. So tonight we're going to focus on not just the censorship of the texts, but also on the kind of the attempts to destroy the writer. And that, I don't know whether that's new or not. Maybe that's something we can discuss later. But that's something where it's not just the words on the page that are flagged as being dangerous or unworthy of publication, but where the writer themselves is flagged in such a way as somehow toxic. And often that's not because of what they've said in a book, but words that they've expressed outside of their creative work. J.K. Rowling being obviously the most obvious example of this. And tonight's first speaker is also a case study in that particular form of brutal cancellation. She's a poet, a performer, and an essayist based in Scotland. We've met many times up there, and formally celebrated, well, I think formally we shouldn't say that, a celebrated and award-winning producer of live literature events in Scotland. She's also the author of poetry collections, live poetry stage shows, and has produced commissioned work across poetry, prose and theatre for numerous publications and institutions, including the Dark Horse, the Edinburgh International Book Festival, the Irish Pages and the Daily Mail, something she probably didn't expect to be publishing her a few years ago. Her film poem, This Imagined We, won the inaugural John Byrne Award for Critical Thinking in 2020. So tonight we're celebrating her new book, Hounded, Women, Harms and the Gender Wars. So please can we give a very, very warm welcome for Jenny Lindsay.
Hello. Hello. First of all, thank you all so much for coming out to hear a non-fiction author that you have heard is also a performance poet, because that's risky. Like that is a risky thing to do. Because I could just do a set of poems about being cancelled. How about that? But no, we are here, as we say, to celebrate the launch of a book I wish I'd never had to write, which is called Hounded, Women, Harms and the Gender Wars. And it is, as Jan says, about the hidden costs of speaking out, in this case particularly on the issues around sex and gender. So just a bit of a backstory about me, because I am not famous. I mean, it's kind of the point. I often find myself tagged into Twitter discussions about, if you don't think cancel culture is real, check out @Jenny Lindsay. And people are like, I've never heard of her. And they're like, yes, that's the point. So just to give a bit of a background, back in 2019, I'd been watching for quite some time as the gender wars gathered pace. I've been watching since probably about 2013 as gender identity ideology mainstreamed, and it sort of scaffolded a around about me, in the literary arts in particular. And it's no surprise, actually, that a great deal of the examples in this book of women who've been hounded come from the worlds of literature, the arts, academia, politics, and these more elite arenas. Because despite protestations to the contrary, gender identity ideology was not a grassroots idea. It started in these elite institutions and sort of spread from there. And in the literary arts, for me, that started in 2013 when I was running a creative writing workshop for an LGB charity. And as we were walking up the stairs, the organiser turned to me and said, "Oh, listen, Jenny, just so you know, we're trying to normalise doing pronoun circles at the beginning of every workshop. So I'll kick off and then we'll end with you and then you can start the workshop." This was literally seconds before we opened the door to meet the participants, and I didn't know what she meant. But the confidence with which she said it, the confidence with which she thought I would know what that meant, really stuck with me. And when it all kicked off and I worked out what was going on, and obviously it came to me, I realised that there was at least 2 or 3 participants who had no idea what this meant either. The workshop was fine. I did not get invited back. I'm trying not to take it personally. But that was my first kernel of something strange is happening. But it was a small thing. And I thought, well, yeah, that was weird. I hope it doesn't happen again. But very, very quickly in the literary arts, people around me started to try really, really hard to learn the new lingo. And we had to learn what gender identity meant, what gender identities meant, blah, blah, blah. But my very first thought, as soon as I was confronted by it, was, I don't think I believe in this. And I tried to work out, and I started noticing people getting hounded over it. And I worked out what they were getting hounded for. And they were getting hounded always for tripping the wire on one of 3 core beliefs. Now, if you've listened to the interviews I've done over the last few days, you'll be sick of me saying these 3 core beliefs by the end of it. But the first core belief is that women are materially definable as a category of human being, i.e., we are adult human females. There is no other criteria to be a woman than to be a girl who survives to adulthood. That's it. You don't need, well, it's basic stuff. So this is the first core belief. It's a category definition. It's not a value judgment, but that's the first core belief. The second core belief is the one that is the most contested, I would say, which is that on the basis of that definition, women are important in life and in law. We're important culturally, legislatively, and politically. Therefore, on the basis of being female, women's single-sex spaces, sports, services, or simply any area where we're trying to address female social justice has to be for women only. And the third core belief is actually the thing that I got hounded over, which is that women should have unfettered freedom of speech and assembly, particularly on matters that affect them profoundly. And the thing that disquieted me more than anything else, I mean, everything disturbed me, but the thing that was disquieting me so much was that the first 2 core beliefs I knew that we were no longer allowed to say. And at the same time, no discussion of it was to be allowed either. And the methods by which the discussion was being shut down terrified me. And in the literary arts in Scotland in 2017 and 2018, I watched as friends of mine, even poets that I knew, started getting involved in noise protests outside a Women's Place UK meetings. They started doing online petitions against women for saying any of the core beliefs. And all of this disturbed me profoundly because the consequences of saying any of those core beliefs are severe. Yes, we do joke about cancel culture. Yes, we do sort of go, oh yeah, cancel culture tour. Oh yeah, Jenny's doing the tour of GB News and the Free Speech Union and Unheard and all the rest of it. All of these jokes abound. It isn't funny. So in 2019, I did one tweet. I had 2 glasses of wine, guys, right? One tweet, and it often starts with one tweet or one comment on Facebook or whatever. I'd been sent from a friend a copy of an article that was written in a local arts magazine called The Skinny. And this film critic was quite well known to me as a massive gender identity activist. And he had written he'd written a justification for violence against lesbians at a Pride March. And I tweeted at the arts magazine that this was not something that you would expect to see in an arts magazine. I was very polite about it, and my life changed overnight. I watched as that tweet was put through a gender identity ideology mangling machine, and it was churned out as a wave of insult, abuse, and just confusion. I was sent direct messages. I mean, we know the pattern of cancellation, or we think we do, right? You see, oh, it's a pile-on. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes too. People started contacting my publisher. My life changed overnight. And the pattern of harms that I started experiencing were psychological harms, social harms, and economic harms. But on top of that, this entire discussion is causing democratic harms to every single one of us, whether or not you believe in the ideology or not. And the thing is, this is constantly framed as a trans issue. It is not a trans issue. It is about whether women are definable as a category in life and in law. And if you want to deny that, the methods you have to use are extraordinary. So this book outlines the psychological, social, economic and democratic harms that all women are facing. And the psychological harms, of course, are that sort of scaffolding that goes up around you, and people abandon you for saying these very, very simple core beliefs. Now, losing your livelihood is stressful enough without it being for things that are foundationally baffling. Because the fact is, this war is going to continue on because there is no way that women will deny that we are materially definable and legislatively important at that basis, because the consequences of doing so are extremely dangerous. And we have seen that. And that is one of the biggest psychological harms, because the harms of this ideology have been set out repeatedly. I was very lucky, I will say, and we'll probably get onto this shortly in the wider discussion. I was very lucky that in my section of the Scottish literary world, an incredibly brave and courageous editor of a literary journal, a very prestigious literary journal called The Dark Horse, watched my hounding with horror. And he commissions me to write a detailed account of my hounding in 2020. His name is Jerry Cambridge. He's the editor of the Dark Horse Literary Journal, and I owe him probably the fact that I'm standing here. So my purpose with that essay was to set out on a personal basis what had happened to me, in the hope that perhaps I could set the record straight. I didn't know what the hell would happen afterwards. But one of the things that happened afterwards, 3 years after it, was I was approached by Louise Knight of Polity to ask if I would use that pattern of harms I'd noticed to talk about the wider phenomena, in a hope that we could articulate exactly what is happening. As the blurb on the back says, the last decade has seen countless cases of women being fired, disciplined, protested or no platformed for their views on sex and gender. Whether high-profile celebrities or previously unknown feminists, such women's vocal non-belief in gender identity as a universal human condition bears a high social cost. But what's the reality behind the headlines and noise? There are women's stories in this that you will never have heard of. They don't have the mouthiness of an Ayrshire poet. They don't have the cultural clout that somebody who'd been around for 2 decades had. There are people desperately working in the arts, trying to cling on, not vocalising their beliefs, but dealing with corrupt boards, with gender identity activist staff, with people trying to rob them of their livelihoods. And this is happening all across the board. There are some extraordinary stories in there. And what I will say is there are very public harms that you'll know about. We all know about the massive, massive protests outside events. We also know that when we ask some people why they are protesting those events, you will get crickets, sometimes metaphorical, sometimes literal. A lot of the time, a lot of the people who are going along with gender identity activism do not know what it is they are protesting. And that is laid out in the book as well. It's an incredibly frustrating movement to try and deal with. If women who are being hounded are right, we have been living through and contributing to a social media turbocharged form of cultural authoritarianism that has upended basic truths. It has changed our common language in order to do that, and our laws, and it's taken a particular interest in turning young people against adults. If we are right, that is what is happening. We could be wrong. But the question about this book and what it leads up to in the conclusion is, even if women are wrong, is anything in this book justifiable? Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Hopefully you all picked up your copies already that you pre-ordered. And I know they're a little bit short on stock here, but you can order it from the bookstall over here, Primrose Hill Books, and they will post it to you for a very reasonable price. For free. Okay, even better. Can't get more reasonable than that. I'd now like to invite our panellists to come and join us on the stage. We have Kate Clanchy. Kate, if you want to sit here. And Matthew Hamilton, if you want to sit on this one, Matthew. And I'm going to sit down now. Lots of you will know, I'm sure you will know Kate and Matthew. Kate Clanchy was first published by Picador in 1996. In the following 25 years, she won a Forward Prize for Poetry, Somerset Maugham and Salter Award, the National Short Story Prize, and the V.S. Pritchett Award, the Writers Guild Award, and the Orwell Prize, among many others. In 2018, however, Picador published England, Poems from a School, an anthology of her school pupils' poetry to great acclaim. But then in 2021, Picador also then apologised for the emotional anguish experienced by people reading her best-selling teaching memoir, Some Kids I Taught and What They Taught Me, and subsequently depublished all of her books. Kate is currently working out why that happened and how that could happen. And she's very much enjoying the experience of being published by Swift Press instead. And I've asked Kate in a moment to explain what happened to her. Well, describe. I'm not sure she can explain. Describe what happened to her for those of you who don't know. But I'm sure those of you who are aware have probably forgotten some of the horrendous details of what happened to Kate. And then we'll come to Matthew Hamilton. Matthew is a literary agent and the founder of the Hamilton Agency, which represents serious and popular non-fiction with a particular interest in political writing from across the ideological spectrum, music, literary memoir, biography, football and entertainment, so a full range. Recent bestsellers include The War on the West by Douglas Murray, not cancelled. Colonialism, A Moral Reckoning by Nigel Biggar was cancelled, then reinstated by Matthew. An Immigrant's Love Letter to the West by Konstantin Kissin. I'm not sure the backstory of that, but I'm assuming there's some kind of shenanigans. And The New Puritans by Andrew Doyle, somebody who we've had speak at a number of Free Speech Union events and whose book launch we actually hosted as well. So I'm going to first ask Kate to just describe what happened to her, and she's going to use some illustrations which Craig is going to kindly flick us through.
Yeah, Jan asked me to describe what happened in 5 minutes, so I thought I'd get some pictures. So that's actually the front page of The Guardian. So I reviewed for The Guardian for 20 years and wrote leaders for them, and then look, that's my book turned into a sanitary towel. Harm has been done. So Jenny was talking about different kinds of harm. And I think that's kind of a religious harm, that one. It's harm. A dark cloud has fallen upon us in the post-plague years, and we don't quite know where it comes from. And I think it's probably what happened at Picador is best described almost as a religious event. But I'll just take you back through it. So if you just give me my next slide. So these are just a small number of thousands of tweets about my book. And what they did, I think what's an important right in publishing and an important right, as a reviewer, I know this from The Guardian, is to quote correctly. So in broadsheets, if I sent in a quote against the grain of a paragraph or against the tone of even a novel, it would be sent back. To quote correctly, you quote in context. But Twitter, of course, has abolished that, and they granulate words. So what happened in 2021 was people, and it was pre-planned action, people have been waiting to do this to me, they granulated words and took out of context words from my teaching memoir and represented satirical and ironical phrases as if they were meant seriously in order to make me appear as a racist. And those are just a few of them. I think neon lit white savorist fuckery, this is grade A shit, is probably quite a good summary, really. I mean, if we have the next slide, yeah. So this is what Picador thought of it. These are some of the emails that were, just a few of them, that were being sent around Picador. But I think the important one there is the criticisms are all founded. So I'd offended a marketing lady I discovered by ordering an extra cake for the launch of England Poems from a School. I think that was my founding incident. But yeah, the criticisms are all founded, which means some of the same words are in there. Some of the words are in there. Therefore, and the trouble for me was I'm guilty of child abuse. And because I had a lot of young people in my care, whose reputations I was watching, and what I could never make people understand was that to say that they were abused was an abuse of them, and profoundly wrong for what was going on. I kept trying, but there we go. Criticisms are all founded. So if you look at the next slide, this is Picador famously apologised over my head. They had meetings without me, without my editor, without my agent, and apologised. This is in the afternoon, and this was their plan for their internal statement. This was their plan for what they were going to do with the book. They felt that it was very serious. They believed the claims from Shimen Suleiman, Monisha Rajesh, and Sunny Singh they'd been bullied online, which I think are entirely false. In fact, I have evidence that no bullying of them ever occurred. But they took that very seriously, and they believed that they, and not I, their contracted author, and definitely not the young people that they'd also published, were the important people. And so what they thought they would do in penance was recall my books from the shops and pulp them and give all the earnings from the books. And some kids I taught sold 45,000 copies. Give all those earnings back to an anti-racism charity. That doesn't make commercial sense as a publisher, and that's why I think it's kind of a religious thing that they felt that this was done. They didn't actually carry that out, but I was threatened with that, and that was that they put me under really very, very bad pressure not to publish in the Sunday Times, not to speak up at all, not to say anything. And they constantly pressured me to apologise by name to my persecutors, which I constantly refused to do. Even to the point of, even to the point of near suicide, when I reported that to them, that was of no concern to them. Their concern was, but she might go back to the Sunday Times. It was a sort of circular thing as well, because at the same time, the Society of Authors was directly pressuring me also to do the same things. And the Royal Society of Literature, Marina Warner, was trying to speak up for me, and she was being bullied by the same people, and also my agent. So my agent was being bullied by similar people. So it was a sort of circular thing. If you give me the next slide, we can see the people that stuck up for me were the people who had nothing at all. So this is Shukriya Rezai, one of the poets I published. She's from the Hazara minority, and so there's a story about her in Some Kids and her almond eyes, which is what Hazara people use as a kind of synecdoche of their difference from the Pashtun majority in Afghanistan. And one of the reasons she wanted to be in the Sunday Times was that was the same week that the Taliban went into Mazar al-Sharif. Her uncle was being held at gunpoint in a cellar. And so at the same time as Sunny Singh was claiming that violence was being done to her by the British reading by book Twitter, I think one of the problems is about words. So if that's violence, what's Shukriya's word? And if you look at the next slide, these were my students, the rest of my students. They organised themselves. There are people in Some Kids who know they're represented. There are people in England Poems from a School who I published, who I brought into print. There are also people that don't functionally exist, but these are the ones who know they existed. And this is what they had to say, that they were just distressed and disempowered, and they would like to speak for themselves, and they'd experienced nothing of concern. That, again, took a lot of courage. The same evening that was published, Picador were writing to Shimini Suleiman to apologise. And they made sure that they took their testimonies and they buried them. They made no contact with those young people. They refused to back them up. They refused even to verify who they were. And these people are published by Picador. So the next slide. So this is at one point in October, Philip Gwyn Jones. Have I said that nobody at any of these meetings had read my book? Because I do know that. I do know that for absolutely sure and certain. They had not read my book. They weren't embarrassed to tell me that. And I think they felt they would be harmed or tainted by reading it. And I should also say that the main editors who had the power in this executive decision, they were the editors of Jeffrey Archer, Wilbur Smith, and Russell Brand. So, yeah, tremendous. Oh, and Jack Monroe, yeah. Yeah, because they're such moral people. But this is so. At one point, Philip Gwyn Jones said that maybe I should have had more rights. If we can just think of that phrase, more rights. Maybe I should have had. They should have been clearer about their support for their rights in the Telegraph. He said that in the Telegraph. That's Shimini Suleiman's response after slagging Clancy off behind her back, and that was my first knowledge that in fact they'd been negotiating with her the whole time. That was just put in the Telegraph. They didn't tell me that was going to happen. Yeah. Next, and the next slide, and that this is the staff report on Philip Gwyn Jones's Telegraph thing, and you can see that the staff feel tainted by association with him. So they feel tainted by an editor saying that they should have paid attention to an author's rights, and they want him punished, and they want him to apologise. And so he's made to apologise. And then the other really important thing is to write to Shimin and Monisha and Sunny. Nobody thinks about writing to me. At the same time, I wrote something in Prospect about suicidal ideation, because I think that's one, and I think Jenny will understand, and anyone who's been through it, this process of being ostracised by everyone you know, of having every bond of trust you know broken, of being publicly disgraced, it really makes you want to die. And that is the purpose of it. It's a very old, simple function. Every so often, the tribe throws someone away in order to bond more tightly. And that person just dies. And the problem with it happening to you is that stays with you, that exit sign. It doesn't go away. It's a very, very dangerous game to play. I wrote that in Prospect. I wrote a version of that in Prospect. I named nothing about Picador. I said nothing about anybody, but they said I shouldn't. They asked me not to publish it, and I said I wouldn't. At the same time, I got some sensitivity reads back. I'd hoped the sensitivity reads would be in good faith. They were not. They were hilarious. I mean, they were ridiculous. They were by people who thought that subtlety and sarcasm, they thought that irony was called sarcasm, something I've always been deeply allergic to. And they certainly thought that to say any ambiguity, any differentiation from purely progressive thought was a harm. It was dangerous. It would bring violence upon people. So they were very ideological. And also they made this demand again that I apologise in the book. They thought the book should apologise to Monisha Rajesh, and I really didn't think that. So the happy ending is coming up there. Next slide. Oh, no, that's not. Oh, that's Philip Gwyn Jones's apology. Oh, can we have a laugh at that? Come on. Woo! And I can exclusively reveal that it really was written by a non-binary 26-year-old. It was. Look at that. I understand. With more awareness to promote diversity, equality, and confusion. There we go. That's what happened to free speech. Maybe we shouldn't. You're not laughing. Oh. All right. I laughed when I first saw it, even though I was deeply upset. Yeah, I laughed because it is ludicrous. The next one, and that's what I wrote to my agent the following week. I didn't know that Swift Press were going to rescue me at all. I didn't know anything. I just knew, and obviously this meant the end of my relationship with my agent because I didn't have any books to represent. I knew that I wouldn't have anything, but it was better than being published by them. And I've since learnt that they were planning to depublish my books anyway, so it didn't make any difference. But it felt heroic at the time. And I think it's true. I cannot have a publisher that apologises for my child abuse, racism, and international online criminality to the world without ever reading the book or checking if I'd done the online criminality. Because, you know what, I'm very respectable. And I have also, without joking, I have a 30-year-old, very well demonstrated teaching record. And they had every single record of that. And they had access to all of that, access to everything. I kept so carefully. Of course, that teaching practice has been not quite destroyed, but pretty much destroyed. because who would hire me? What I was hoping to do was mentor teachers. That's what I would have liked to have done. I'm really good at teaching people how to write poems. That's all I wanted to do. That's gone. Yeah, so it's. I just think it was really silly what happened to me.
I think that's not the word for it, Kate. I think sinister is the word for what happened to you, Kate, not silly. I mean, it's
Sinister and foolish and
absolutely
petty.
sinister. And I remember hearing about it as it was going on. And there was a certain glee, I remember, in the bringing down of you.
Yeah.
And that was about, we've got a liberal. We've caught a liberal.
Yeah.
And it was this sense that you weren't quite up to speed as a liberal. With the kind of new rules, and but I wondered whether I'll come on to Matthew in a second. Just my view, I think, is that being accused of either racial insensitivity or racism is actually even worse than being accused of being a TERF. Partly because it can be made and with no foundation to it whatsoever. I mean, TERF is actually a thing in the sense I know it's a slur. I know it's become
slur.
I know. But there is a set of beliefs, and you're able to set them out. It's not a false.
But they are seen as evil.
I know. So the meaning attached to it is.
I would agree
negative.
that's getting either is a way to bring down competition. What I was thinking the whole way through, Kate, was the quote from Nicole Jones, who's a young feminist writer who now works for Sex Matters. And her quote to me when I interviewed her was, "Cancel culture against women in this war is an attack on competency." Kate Clanchy is one of the best poetry educators in the UK. That is why she was a target.
So, Matthew, could you give us some insights as to how this stuff works behind the scenes? Why isn't controversy a good thing for publishing? Why do they run away from some controversies and controversial people, and then, on the other hand, create dramas and thrive on some of these kind of brutal kickings that people like Kate and Jenny get?
Yes, well, I mean, first of all, I mean, I've had a very different experience from you two. Even though I've been representing, as you said, a lot of writers that go against the grain, to say the least, and who challenge the monoculture, a lot of TERF writers, a lot of conservative writers, all sorts of people who are, problematic in this thing. What's extraordinary in about 8 years of doing this is that I've had literally no trouble whatsoever at all, apart from one email from somebody who saw that a client of mine was sort of saying something TERFy on Twitter, and in this sort of slightly sickly way of trying to be concerned, was saying, maybe you ought to speak to your client just in case something were to happen, And that email is it. And I thought, God, why is that? I mean, one... I thought, well, is it? Well, partly is, but maybe I'm an agent. I'm behind the scenes. I'm not front and center.
It's because they're men.
I also run my own agency, and so I've got no meetings. I've got no colleagues. I don't report to anyone. And then in 2018, Douglas Murray delivered this book, The Madness of Crowds, which, for those of you who don't know, was a sort of 250-page takedown of gender ideology, progressive thinking, critical race theory, you name it. He was going to sort of investigate it and systematically over this, I think a quarter of the book was about trans alone, and also even dismantling the idea that the LGBTQ plus was even a community. So he really went there. I mean, basically quite sort of humane and sympathetic. But we thought, right, let's buckle up for this one. Nothing. Nothing. It was amazing. With his first book, The Strange Death of Europe, when he went into Bloomsbury to have a publicity meeting, we left and he said, it's like they could smell the sulfur in the air. They absolutely couldn't bear this guy, in the offices. And then when that book was 17 weeks on the bestseller list, he was greeted like a sort of conquering hero when we came in for the next book. And it made me realize actually just how shallow these beliefs are. That, here at Bloomsbury, it's a very liberal, very, this book surely would have caused somebody a bit of, but no, he was a moneymaker and he was a man, and also he wasn't an apostate. He was always beyond the pale in some ways because he was always a conservative. So he was never part of the tribe. He never departed. He never had to update his beliefs. There was no expectation of him. But the basic thing is that he was a man. And I think when that book came out, again, there was only one bit of trouble he got from a gay magazine. I think it was Attitude or something in the States, who basically revoked his gay card. Although he was gay, which he is, he wasn't politically gay. And I thought, God, and I was looking, at not just your two cases, but I mean, like hundreds of them. I thought, God, and even, did the same thing apply with male editors? Tonight we've got Ursula Doyle here, who's, published some of the best turf books, well, the best, by Kathleen Stock and Victoria Smith and all sorts of great people. And, she is the one that they plotted against. I don't want to go into too many, but, and in that very publishing sort of way, so although my clients haven't been hounded, in the case of Nigel Biggar, it was very softly and sneakily done. So his book came in that was commissioned, and it was basically saying the British Empire, lots of bad things, but, we also abolished slavery, maybe a couple of good things. Let's take a balanced view. And it was a book that they had asked him to write, and when he delivered it, and it was brilliant. And suddenly it was like, perhaps we should just delay it a bit, just until the public feeling improves. And it was going, well, when should we be scheduling it? And it was, let's decide on that, at a later point, and let's not rush things, and and basically that is my experience of the lack of free expression. There's two things. There's the sort of sneaky, silent, it's happening, but mysteriously books aren't commissioned, or Swift Press, which have been a fantastic, there's basically me and about 5 other people who are trying to it's like picking a lock to get any books that challenge this. So it's very, very subtle, slightly sneaky. And I think that was very much Ursula's experience at Little Brown, where decisions were made that she wasn't told about, and no one actually just ever said anything up front. And I would say that the other thing is the complete and utter lack of curiosity about people's other beliefs other than the monoculture. I think that's even the biggest thing. It's just not even a curiosity, because I think it's it's the publishing version of Be Kind is like, it's a nice industry. So no one wants to cause a fuss, particularly if you're an editor that's maybe had a slightly dodgy season and you think, do I really want to row with my publicity director? And so, maybe I'll just let that one, go, and just this wanting things to be nice and comforting is a very, very stifling and sort of depressing thing.
But why is it then that nobody? It's become really stark recently, and particularly in the last week, actually. So, I was at an event, Intelligence Squared event last Wednesday, which was a debate on is free speech under threat. And what was very clear from the speaker, who was saying that free speech isn't under threat, and who was kind of poo-pooing the reality of cancel culture, was that she has no attachment to consistency. All she wants is the silence. She doesn't. There is no way of putting pressure on by saying, well, what about, how come you allow this but you don't allow that? It doesn't work. I spoke to her afterwards, and it just there's no interest, because actually the whole point is to actually silence. So what? And then also I was at the LGB Alliance conference on Friday, which was proceeding in a beautiful way until insects were thrown into the room in an act of sort of disgust, to kind of provoke disgust and to totally make impossible the meeting of people to discuss important issues. And this was done by, very, very young activists. I don't know, activist isn't the right word. I mean, they're kind of... Well, no, I think that, no, I actually found it, the next day I actually found it very disturbing, because I thought, well, what if it wasn't crickets? What if it was something else? And, they clearly have got more than the wrong end of the stick, let's say, and yet feel licensed somehow to enact that act of, a kind of short of violence, but nevertheless there could be violence. And I find that really worrying. And so why is it then that there is no counter view put in terms of the attack on democracy, or in terms of the need for the dissidents? Why aren't we using this kind of language of democracy, if you like, or the kind of language of old totalitarianism to push back on this kind of thing? Because you talk about democratic harms really well in the book, but we don't tend to use that kind of language. We don't say these young people are actually anti-democratic, and that's what they're doing. So why don't we see this for what it is?
I think you could say that to an editor and they would sort of look at you slightly blankly, to be honest. I think they would. I think they would go, well, you know what the young people are like. And you go, well, why are you hiring them? Why can't this be part of your job interview? Well, they're just young. They'll grow. It's just, anyway, let's talk about something else. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I think that's quite an advanced idea, honestly. So,
can I add to that? Because I think that's one of the things I saw, because I kind of straddled the performing and the publishing and the sort of theatre worlds. Across all of them, there was this sense of, it's not a word, right? But I might try and make it a word, inevitablism about it all. It was, this is, when there was a complaint made about the new code of conduct for the Scottish Book Trust, for example, that all professional writers in Scotland get a lot of work out of, so you kind of have to be on it. And they brought out a code of conduct, and it was really quite questionable. And when they had complaints about that from obviously myself and the poet Maggie Gibson, but we did it all by email. We weren't like for firing angry things on Twitter. There was a sort of sense that it was like, well, these kind of things are necessary these days, are they not? And it's like, well, no, because writers aren't any different from how they used to be. We're not going into school assemblies and talking about badger baiting or anything like that. We are exactly the same people that we were. We don't need codes of conduct like this. And plus, your job is to facilitate writers. It's not to control them or treat them as if they're employees. Writers have to be free to speak about what we want and to explore complex ideas. And that sense of inevitabilism is in, the Society of Authors, it's in Creative Scotland, it's in the Arts Council, it's in publishing houses. It's like, well, and that thing you said about was it Nigel Biggar's book? Nigel Biggar's book, we must wait until the public mood changes. These people don't understand the public mood. But if you look at publishing, the Women Who Wouldn't Whisht anthology that I was really proud to have a contribution to was in the Sunday Times bestseller list for 3 weeks. This was a book that nobody would have touched a year ago. The public are starved for these kind of books.
And with Nigel Biggar as well.
Exactly.
There was a Sunday Times bestseller.
Yeah.
And there was the best revenge.
They don't know what the public wants, I'm afraid.
And Kate, these tactics of denunciation, lists, open letters, rumour, way before we get to the kind of the bureaucratic responses of codes of conduct, etc. I mean, did that seem completely alien, or was there? I mean, when you've tried to understand it since, is there a whole pattern there that you think we can understand in more analytical terms? Do you think?
Yeah, well, I hope that nobody can ever quite go through what I got through again. It was a pre-planned action. It was planned to promote the Good Immigrant America. It got a little bit out of hand because everyone was over cooperative, but it was to do with the, it's ridiculous to think that I was a powerful person or that I was annoying, but I think I was kind of in a mid position. When people talk about people being mobbed at work, which is a phenomenon. The people who get mobbed at work are usually the mid-ranking employees. They're not the people at the top. It's when you've got a big discontented corporation. And I think publishing in London is so closely connected. All the companies almost function as one, and the agents function as part of it as well. It's all like one big unit, one big disorderly bad company, and it's got these stale male people at the top who've never moved, who've got power invested. And it's got lots of discontented women who are not paid enough, of all ages, who don't have very interesting jobs, not even the bottom, but in a kind of, disorderly Feeding Frenzy underneath with lots of very fancy titles, always called director or something, but they're not. They're still the marketing person. So there is a lot of unhappiness, and then the financial bottom has fallen out of novels and things like that in recent years. Because I've witnessed in my long life. When I started, I was a poet, and poets have always been vicious to each other because we weren't paid anything. Yeah. But I have witnessed novelists turn into poets, so they're the kind of people aren't going to earn anything, and all they're in it for is the reputation and the kudos, and so that viciousness kind of infecting all of it. So I think the people at the top want to get back in with the people at the bottom in a company. So what you do is you bond by mobbing someone in the middle. That's how mobbing works. So I was a person in the middle, I reckon. I was somebody with their feet in different camps who could be done in. And so the people at the top of Macmillan gained with the young people in their company by condemning and scapegoating me. And I know that it was said in meetings that I didn't matter because I was only one person, and that it would be a good thing on the whole. And that was told to me. In fact, I was expected to agree with it. That it was a good thing, that this was inevitable because of all the strong feelings about race, and that I would agree that it was good that I was being scapegoated. And I didn't. Sorry, that was an incoherent point. But I think that is a pattern, and I know on an individual basis, and I could bore on forever about the people that were mean to me. I know it was a planned action, and I have all the evidence of it being a planned action. It could be planned for other people, but the weakness is there in the structure of publishing, and in the people at the top who are invested, who do not want to change, and the people, and then this very large number of underpaid people. And also, I think there is a thing that this is the first generation of women that have ever got anywhere, and obviously the best thing to do is to form a circular firing squad, isn't it? And then we'll just. It's like lefty women will definitely all shoot each other, and that will make it more convenient for everyone else.
Could we, before we go out to the floor, could we maybe just think about what the consequences are of this for creativity itself? And so, obviously, Kate, you're saying that now you will not teaching children who might otherwise have benefited from your teaching. Jenny, you don't get to programme literary festivals and perform I presume you would no longer be invited to speak or to perform in public.
No, I haven't. In fact, within 24 hours of this book being announced, a Creative Scotland literature officer phoned a local bookshop in Edinburgh and warned them about stocking it. So that's the atmosphere I live in. There's something in the water in Scotland, guys. I've got no idea what's going on. For my own individual, I was very, very lucky in that I had to write my way out of it very, very quickly. If I'd just... when I got hounded, it was just before lockdown. If I had nothing, if Jerry Cambridge hadn't commissioned me to write that essay, I say in the acknowledgements of my book that I might not have been emboldened to write this book today. I don't know if I'd have been here to write this book today because I was bereft. I felt like I was going completely insane and I'd lost everything. And the houndings in the arts are vicious, particularly vicious for that reason. Because if you are a proper writer, i.e. you're not in it for the schmoozy parties and to write crap that might get you commissions from the high Hegians, if you're an actual writer with passion, it's a vocation. So when you lose it, you don't just lose money, you lose your reason for getting out of bed in the morning. And I'm just lucky that other people have come along and given me another reason to get out of bed in the morning. I know this isn't just about the gender wars, but gender identity ideology and related ideologies about power and hierarchies and how we're all evil and we should all repent and be joyless and hate ourselves and everything about ourselves. These ideologies have destroyed so much that I love and so much of the things that made the arts brilliant. The joy, the parties, the getting things wrong, the exploring complexity, the Barneys and the bar afterwards, but now the bar is Twitter. And Twitter is causing the younger generation of writers serious self-censorship.
It's a serious confidence. That's how you make writers magically better, is you tell them that they're good. That's how I produce my young people's writing. I just told them they were good a lot and told them to get on with it. And that's the magic ingredient. And I think that now, I'm sure I'm on lots of writers' shoulders. I'm sure they start writing something and think, oh God, look, remember what happened to Kate Clanchy? I better not write that. I'm sure that happens a lot. But people have told me it does. I think there's a kind of, and I think it's quite right. You should be scared of what happened to me. It's absolutely awful. But I think a lot of writers, I think I'm in between the one word and the next for a lot of writers.
But so what seems to happen then here is that creative people get dragged away from the imagination. So I'm really struck by Graham Linehan, who now he doesn't get to write comedy, and even to ask him to talk about comedy is very difficult because he is so concerned to address the source of his cancellation, which was not his comedy; it was his views on other things. So, how on earth do we rescue the freedom of expression and freedom of the imagination from being dragged into the kind of prosaic and everybody having to become political, and there being no space left for freedom and freedom of expression?
We keep doing exactly what we're doing tonight, and we keep speaking out. That's it. The only way out of this is through as creative people. And what happened to Kate, although it was for very different reasons, I actually, in the truest sense of the word, I was triggered by what happened to Kate, and I got in touch with her straight away because I was sitting there watching it in horror, thinking, oh my God, I know exactly how Kate feels. Is she okay? I didn't know Kate. I was like, hello, we don't know each other, but oh my God, are you all right? Jesus, because I knew the psychological layering. Kate is waving a white flag. And honestly, I've learned so much from Kate about being a poetry educator. I used to do all of that kind of work as well, and I've lost that too. But what we do is what we're doing. We keep writing, we challenge it, we say, no, F off. We are going to keep writing. We are going to keep speaking out, and we are going to continue being creative and playful. I'm going to keep doing that. Bugger them,
Okay, Matthew, did you want to, before we go out to the floor?
Well, just in terms of what we can do, I suppose building alternative institutions as well. I mean, like I've started an agency, Mark Richards has started a publishing house, Swift. You've also got Louise at Polity and Senator George Owers, who are sort of very much changing the culture from within. But I think more and more we need to actually create lists and companies that aren't beholden to these people, that it doesn't matter if it gets controversial, and I think that's slowly, and the Free Speech Union, I think all of these organizations, and the more that they connect, there is the beginnings of a sort of resistance to this, I think, or at least creating a space where people can, be like they used to be.
The new underground.
Yeah.
Literally. Vinay's going to come and get one of your microphones so that we can use that for the audience. Okay, if you want to put your hands up, and Vinay will come, a chap here to start with.
Thank you. It's interesting how a number of you have worked within the media landscape in the last 10 years, and you've written for The Guardian. And it's almost as if this world you've been in, it is a left-wing world. I mean, would it not be worth actually saying the left-wing world are your enemies? I mean, no. I think you're avoiding the issue. You're saying it's terrible, it's bad, but you're not embracing another world which could perhaps give you the freedom that you want. Because I think perhaps you're caught up still in this left-wing world you were in previously, who have rejected you, who hate you.
Well, that's
Move on from that
that's
left-wing world.
falling in with the world of binaries, isn't it? And saying that you've got to be in this silo or you've got to be in that silo. And I think I'm profoundly not want to be that. I want to carry on having a nuanced and diverse position.
Yeah, I'll add to that as well, if that's all right. I don't actually think that a lot of my hounders do even hate me. I don't think they think about me that often. They had their jibes and now they've moved on. But in terms of it being a left-wing world, I don't think that it is a left-wing world, actually. I think it's a very, very cautious, conservative, small c conservative world that doesn't actually think too much. I'm an old-fashioned liberal. I will speak to anyone. I've been in this room. I'll be in Filia's rooms. I'm at the Battle of Ideas. I will speak to left and right and everyone in between. I am an independent writer. I don't belong to tribes, okay? That is why I will speak to absolutely anybody and I'll take the hits as I go. I do have the freedom to write and to speak, and that's exactly what I've been doing for the last 5 years. It's why I got into so much trouble. So,
thank you. Feel free to share the mic.
I think I actually kind of agree with you. I think, well, it depends on, I suppose the notions of left and right and what is liberal has changed so much in the last 5 years. But I think if you broadly look at the right of centre world, that is where you're getting the most freedom, the most humour, the most encouragement. And there's you look at what the Unheard Club is doing, I think there's, that doesn't mean I just think the left has gone into a new phase. And I think that, I think that a lot of people who probably aren't even that right of centre, but find a home there. And so I think there's some truth to that, yeah.
Not all of that.
No, not
Okay.
all the left. Maybe the old school left.
No,
who care
no
about
heckling.
class or,
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
again, if we look at the way everything was in 1995, but this is the way it is now, and the left has been pretty much taken over by this ideology, and
I've been reluctant to come to a similar conclusion, having been raised in the left, but actually now that I look at aspects of the left through kind of the eyes of the present, then I do think that the dismissal of freedom was there in the British left, alongside, the compassion and the kind of, all those kinds of, commitments to equality. But there was a disregard for freedom, and including to the extent of a kind of apologies for Stalinism. And those kind of habits died hard, I think, in the left. They were sort of internalized. So I do think they've come home to roost in many ways. Okay, right. There's a lady in a white T-shirt over there.
Hi there. I've worked in publishing all my life, 35 years now, and I have never known it as bad as it is, the lack of freedom. Like I think Matthew said, the last 5 years particularly. I'd say go further back, 10 years, when we started importing rubbish over from America. I started noticing cancellations happening in YA fiction in America. I'm used to work in children's publishing, so it's a particular area that concerns me. I want to say a couple of things. One, I was working at Mills and Boon in lockdown, and my husband's a dentist and he couldn't work. So suddenly I was the main breadwinner. And that was when my friend Gillian Phillip got cancelled. And I didn't feel I could speak up. But I did email Charlie Redmayne because it was just around Black Lives Matter. And going back to the point about commercialism, Charlie did this, we've got, we're listening to you, blah, 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 blah,
Could you
blah.
just explain who Charlie Redmayne is?
Sorry, Charlie Redmayne is, I'll stand up. Charlie Redmayne is the CEO of HarperCollins, and he basically wrote, did a town hall, and it was all about listening to people and if you've got concerns. So I emailed him after the meeting and said, yes, I have a concern. I think as a gender critical person, I do not have a safe space in HarperCollins. And he said, I'll talk to you, but that never happened. I then left HarperCollins. But interestingly, that week, to show his, right-on credentials, he announced that David Starkey was being cancelled because, I can't remember, David Starkey had said something that was controversial. Now, David Starkey is a historical writer. Pretty sure that the reason they cancelled him was nothing to do with what he'd said. It was an easy hit for them because his books weren't making any money. 2 months later, they published a book by Piers Morgan, and it's like, so on one hand, David Stark is beyond the pale, but yeah, Piers Morgan's controversial, but it doesn't matter because we know we're going to make money out of him. And it's that cynicism that I really think is I think it's probably always been there in publishing, but I think it's changed. And the other thing I would say is, I'm nearly 60. People like Charlie Redmayne are my age. I think David Shelley is a bit younger than me, but it's my generation. We are now in charge. And they are running scared. They are running scared of their young people. And it's pathetic. It's spineless. It is utterly shameful. The cowardice. And as you can see, I'm wearing a Scene in Publishing T-shirt. I'm outing myself. This might come, but I am outing myself. If anyone is in publishing here and wants to join Scene in Publishing, please come and see me. I'm outing myself because I am proud to stand up for the disadvantaged, the dispossessed, the people who are writing to us. New authors write to us every day saying they do not feel they can even get through the door anymore because the letters they get from agents is, if you're not this, that, and the other, we're not interested. And that is shameful. And so, yeah, I agree with everything you've said.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well done.
So, for the benefits of people at home and people who didn't quite catch that, it's SEEN, SEEN in publishing, which is, there's a whole load of these networks. If you go and Google that, you'll have some. There's a really fantastic thing to be part of. Okay, I can see some turf hands at the back. So, yeah.
As a former editor at The Economist, the thing I just still don't understand is how come the invisible hand doesn't sort this all out. I mean, the books that they're writing or they're publishing instead of people like Kate Blanchard are rubbish and don't sell. I mean, we keep hearing, oh, well, they're just going for the books that'll sell, but they're not going for the books that'll sell. Look at how Women Who Wouldn't Wish did. Why? Why don't they go for the books they know will sell?
Matthew?
I think it's what Kate said. It's a religious thing, and status is much. I think it's also part of these big corporations. I mean, it's so long since I worked for a publisher, but my wife works for a publisher, one of the very big ones, and just the amount of time spent in terms of sort of changing the story and basically social engineering, and in which sort of profit or discovering new voices or, you know, this thing of engineering society or this sort of building this utopian world seems to me sort of almost of equal importance. And so if so the profit motive, which we all know ultimately decides, which is why J.K. Rowling will never be cancelled. But I do think there are other sort of incentives and rewards within corporate life now, as well as the religious aspect.
Could I say something about the sort of wider literary ecology as well? Because obviously I was kind of, again, I wasn't in the more traditional publishing world, but I was involved in sort of literary festivals and things like that. I don't think a single gender critical feminist or radical feminist has been booked by the Edinburgh International Book Festival since 2019, which was the last year I was there. And I wasn't yet out when they booked me for that. And I don't understand it because, as we know, I was... Okay, so in 2020, I'm looking in lockdown at all these theatres, literary festivals complaining and going, oh my goodness, how are we going to survive? I don't know. And I was coming to sold out Free Speech Union events and sold out Philia conferences and sold out feminist and free expression creative nights. And I was like, why don't you book some people want to bloody listen to? You know, and I just don't understand it. And that's part of the social engineering too, because the book festivals are going, oh, we don't want to upset the other authors in the author's yurt. You know, come on. Yeah, it's really frustrating.
Yeah, when they had a conference in Macmillan to decide after, you know, the whole disastrous thing had kind of finally spun out in about February. They had a kind of post-mortem on me. Which, I mean, I've seen the graphics for it. They started with this graphic of this toad trying to get out of a bucket, which I think was me. But anyway, they concluded that the problem that had caused the whole problem was that bad think words had been written, and the bad think words had been written because the editor had indulged the author, and their final conclusion was that authors should not be valued over staff. So you should think of the staff. That was their strongest conclusion, that the staff should come first. And I think what they're thinking there is the staff's Twitter accounts. So that the staff want to be seen to be publishing nice things, good things, and that should be their priority. So that's what they learned. Don't put any more toads in buckets. Yeah.
That sounds very much like what's gone on in the universities as well. But the thing that's missing, so you've got the profit motive, you've got then the religious whatever, fervour, but then where on earth is language and writing and art and literature and poetry?
Well, it's a really striking feature of my case that it was all about what was being said about me, and nobody at any point stopped to read my book.
Okay, right. There's a chap waving at the back. So because you're waving, I'll come to you for some reason, and then we'll come down here.
Hello. My name's Peter Reynard. I'm a poet, and I also happen to be married to Maya Forstater. No need to applaud me. Applaud my wife. I just wanted to make it clear that there's nothing more lonely than being on the so-called far left in this debate. And I realised that there was a problem when the Morning Star, which those of you don't know is the communist paper of Great Britain, was agreeing with what the Daily Mail was saying. And that's the kind of fucked up world that we live in that you will only win if you include the left. For years, I would say to Maya, there's a poverty within liberalism, because liberalism believes that we can all have all these views that we want to have and can live in harmonious conjunction, but that doesn't work. You have to have people from different backgrounds in positions of power. And so that this isn't a right-wing or a left-wing issue, although that's how it's seen. This is very much a left-wing issue for those of us on the left who believe in the material reality of sex.
Thank you. Should we take a couple more? Yes, there's a lady down here. That lady there. Okay, just a sec. We'll just come to this lady, then we'll come to you. I don't usually say ladies. I don't know why recently I've started using the word. I used to just say women.
I wonder if you'd like to say something about the role of the Society of Authors. Yeah, I resigned my membership of them last year because of their complete dereliction of their responsibility and their role. So I'd like to know if you could talk about how we could change that.
Thank you. Yes, and certainly that was what prompted us at the Free Speech Union to set up our Writers' Advisory Council, and Kate's on that, and other people in the room, and Matthew as well. Shall we just come to Stephanie, and then we'll come back to the panel?
Yeah, I just want to talk because I want Rachel Rooney to talk, But just to take this from what we're talking about an adult world here and the death of art with this. But in the children's world, it's a question of safeguarding. So we've seen one of the best-loved children's poets, Rachel Rooney, being totally cancelled and bullied and losing her career out of writing the most brilliant, joyful book because it didn't fit the narrative that you're supposed to write about for children now, and there are over 60 picture books for little children telling them they could be trans. That's a huge safeguarding issue. And yet why are the adults who are, running the Society of Authors, who are book publishers, who are working for Waterstones, why have they all forgotten about safeguarding? And they have changed the subject of children's books, and it's teaching them now a form of unreality that's going to be really harmful to them. And they're cancelling the authors who are writing great things about being proud of your body.
Thank you. Rachel, did you want to say something?
Well, I don't really know what to add, really. I mean, children's publishing is possibly the worst area in the creative arts, in my opinion. I was quite happy when JK came out, because when they started talking about the bigoted, nasty children's author, it was no longer necessarily me. Because I think I kind of trumped her by a few weeks on that one. Like Kate, the beginning of my cancellation happened within the first few days, led by a core section of people who also happened to be similar to the core section of people who attacked Kate, even though the issues were very different. So these are people to watch. Society of Authors were outrageous. Nicola Solomon, when I pleaded with them because I was a member to do something or to speak out, she emailed internally and said, let it run, and did an email about me to the other staff saying, wrapping up Rachel Rooney for Christmas, which I just thought was despicable. So yeah, keep your eye on children's publishing. I won't swear, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And also, they cancelled me, or the cancellation started before anybody had read the 248-word tome of mine. which had nothing in it. So they were saying things about it that weren't even in it. It just doesn't even mention trans. It's just talking about your body eats and poops and wheezes and can jump. And in fact, I didn't even put things like jump because I was trying to include every single child. So I just talked about the senses, like, you know, it can tickle, it can be tickled, its hair grows, you know, because as a former special needs teacher working with profoundly handicapped kids, I wanted to include every child. And if it works for profoundly and multiply handicapped kids, it works for all children. That's the basis of it.
Yeah, it is a really lovely book. I remember looking at it 2 years ago at the Battle of Ideas, and it was on the bookstall, and it's actually really moving to read it now because of, well, partly knowing your story, but also the book itself in its simplicity and the fact that you understand children in a way that the new trends seem to be very alienated from actual children. So should we just talk a little bit about the particular issues in children's publishing? Because this applies to new authors and it also applies to classic children's literature as well. So what are the prospects for the survival of a library of children's literature to take forward into another generation?
Well, I think children's literature is a particular thing, and I think any good religion gets going on the idea that something bad has happened to children. You know, children's crusades, children are being harmed, blood libels all depend on what has happened to children. And I think that's, you know, part of that focus, and that's what that people focused on, the idea that I was damaging children, and were happy to say that I was abusing children on the grounds that they didn't like my metaphors, and in the same way that they did to Rachel. And I think for both of us, you know, both of us being teachers, both of us both of us being a teacher is a vocation, and it's the assault on your core values that is so deeply damaging. You know, if you to be told that you don't care about the thing that you do care, that you're damaging of the people that you don't want to damage. And I think it's no accident that it's about children, that people focus on children, and it's absolutely to be resisted.
Yeah, well, if I can just touch on Rachel, who obviously features in my book as one of the women who I described. It is my personal belief that the hounding of Rachel Rooney is among the worst I've witnessed in the arts, due to its timing, its scale and its impact, as well as the directly personal nature of a lot of the online attacks against her that I've witnessed coming from peers. Poetry is a small world. I share hounders with Jess de Walls, with Rachel Rooney, with Helen Joyce, with Jane Clare Jones. It is often the same core of writers who are doing this. If I can just address that Society of Authors question very briefly with the very few sentences that I say here, which is, if the arts were one workplace with, say, artistic institutions, festivals, programmers, curators and funders representing management, and artists and writers representing the workers, I would argue that there is ample evidence to suggest that gender-critical creatives are experiencing a hostile work environment of precisely the nature highlighted by many successful employment tribunal in other sectors. If we put membership organisations such as the Society of Authors in the role of HR, we could argue that women's experience of direct and indirect discrimination is being inadequately addressed. If I may be so bold, now some of you may not say this about your own literary hounders, I will. If I may be so bold, looking at some arts organisations' approach to hounders versus those hounded, we might also say that management is promoting and rewarding those who discriminate against other workers and encouraging the unfair dismissal of those they have targeted. And I think that's exactly what's happening in the arts. And often the people who, I mean, Rachel Rooney's beautiful poem, My Body Is Me, which is gorgeous and beautiful and amazing, and please buy it for your kids, is so beautiful. And she was told that her poem was akin to terrorist propaganda. And instead of saying, you sound insane, the Society of Authors, etc., go along with this insanity. I don't know. That's what's happening, though. So how it changes, I'm not sure. Better people in charge, I would say.
I just want to make a quick point about the safeguarding. I think that's quite an interesting thing, because I think what's entered into the sort of bloodstream publishing is that there's this thing about banned books. And that actually the only time you tend to hear publishers talking about freedom of speech is when it's basically really gross pornography or mutilation being marketed at 9-year-olds. And I think that the safeguarding is in its relation to free speech. I just think that they're using free speech in a very disingenuous way. And I think when you actually look at the books on the banned books list, there's no way you'd give your kid that. I mean,
No, I absolutely agree with that. The event I was at last week about free speech, the only point of agreement between the two sides was around bans in schools in the US. Suddenly everybody's nodding along because they think it's a Trumpian phenomenon. But any other cancellation of anybody is no interest whatsoever. Okay, where is Vinay? Are you at the back? Do you want to just see if there's anything in the Q&A? Just give me a couple of questions from the Q&A.
So, I mean, this has kind of been touched on, but I still think it's useful to raise with Rachel's book and everything we just talked about. But someone said, you've both worked in schools as teachers like me. What would you like to see happening in schools to open up and not close down discussion on these issues? Why are there no gender critical books aimed at teens, for example? And then the person said, maybe a lot of us will agree, Rachel Rooney has a great book for younger children. And the second thing, someone said, I'm a writer who's been cancelled after 3 books published, a couple of minor awards, etc. Now I can't get any kind of gig as a writer. I've lost friends. I've been abused. Should I give up writing? Do I give up writing? Is there any point trying to keep going?
Thank you.
You want one more? Is that?
If there's another...
Yeah. And then there's another question about anger. So person's put, could I ask Jenny and Kate about anger? We tend to be very reasonable and analytic or we focus on the absurdity of being cancelled and hounded. Can we afford to be angry, or is it simply dangerous for women to express strong and justified emotion?
That's a good question.
I don't know about anger. I was sort of broken rather than angry. I don't know how you went.
I was furious.
Were you?
Also broken, but furious with it. Right, I'm going to forget all of them. I'll address the anger thing first, because actually it is a double-edged sword. You have to make your anger useful, because as a woman who I've been getting on stages since my late teens, and the double standards of how women are judged compared to men is something that I've battled with my entire life. It's very different as a woman of 42 than it was when I was a 19-year-old, but, you know, a woman getting on a stage and even expressing confidence is sometimes taken as arrogance. A woman refusing to agree with a strongly put point from a male opponent is sometimes what would be the way they would put what horrible word would you get? I don't know, harridan or whatever. And so a woman being angry, and for example, the one and only time that I actually there's 2 times now. Okay, the first time that I let rip at my hounders, it was in broken anger, and I tweeted once in February 2020 to a woman who was just really just being nasty. And I tweeted at her, I was like, would you please stop? This has been 7 months of this. You're making me suicidal. And the next comment underneath it was, here come the white woman's tears. So I had to watch my suicidality be mocked and jeered. And I do not want to tell you both how frightening that was, but also how angry it made me once I'd reflected on it. So actually even expressing the psychological damage of a hounding is incredibly difficult. It's all in the book. There are so many women who I think are actually deeply traumatized by the lack of trust we have for everybody around us now. But in terms of the anger, and if I can actually address the person who's worried they might stop writing, don't stop writing. And if it's just your journal, just do that. Set a timer for 7 minutes and write your rage and your anger into a journal for 7 minutes, and you'll feel loads better. And then go and set up a Substack, which is where lots of writers are going now, because that's where you can build a new audience. It's something I'm trying to do as well. So don't stop writing. Can't remember the other questions.
Yeah, definitely keep going. Yeah. White women's tears. You know, Sunny Singh started a competition to make fun of my bereavement when both my parents died. She invited professors, and it was responded to by professors, by people who had degrees, and they all wrote different satires of my grieving. And that's a really strange place for our culture to have ended up.
So these people don't ever really get bunched together and then exposed and have rotten fruit thrown at them. I mean,
people are terrified of them. They don't
terrifying.
want to say
You should
I
be
can-
terrified. You should be terrified of that happening to you and your family. You know,
Yes.
that was terrible for my brother, for example, because they were his parents.
But what
too.
I mean is, there is no reckoning.
There was no reckoning, no, because they're righteous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matthew, what's your view of the situation in the UK versus other countries? I mean, so in France, Michel Houellebecq can be published and be on television and interviewed, and nothing can be too outrageous. So
I think it's getting. I think it's quite bad in Germany. You know, they've, like, for example, I think they've withdrawn Hillbilly Elegy, the J.D. Vance book. You know, that's now withdrawn from the market. You know, and I mean, I think in America it's just so much worse over there. But it's coming here, like everything. You know, I mean, what you can see in America will be us in 2 years' time. That's the normal thing.
Sorry about
and
that.
And to the writer, I think that's a really good point about Substack. I think that's another network, another way of people taking sort of ownership or agency of their life, and again, not needing someone's approval. You know, so I think that's been a really good thing for a lot of my writers as well. So.
Let's just take two more questions. Yes, I can see Serena there. It's on your other shoulder.
I think one of the things that all of us need to address is the question of stealth cancellation, which goes on incessantly, and the thing is that for every person who is publicly cancelled, there are probably 10 others who are quietly discovering that they are no longer persona grata at festivals and everything else. And it's all done with this sort of, oh dear, if only you'd asked sooner, but we've got everything booked out already. And I don't know how we even begin to address that, but it is very much part of the problem.
Thank you, Serena. Yes, and sorry, Vinay, over here, final question. I wasn't sure who had your hand up. Was it both of you? Do you want to fight it out?
Hi there. I'm working as an HR commentator. Don't hate me. Particularly looking at the disaster of DEI, and I would say that publishing is probably the worst example of the most extreme craziness I've seen. Actually, 10 years ago, though, I was working to expose unpaid internships. And I have to say that publishing was always bad 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and it had been going on for 10 years probably prior to that. And I wondered if the panel had any comment on whether this is a structural problem within publishing, and how many people in this room would have supported people like me who were trying to expose that sort of thing as a problem with kind of lots of middle class people coming in, and it being the sort of career you can only do. These women in the office that you talk of, I know exactly who you mean. They're a total pain in the ass. But the reason why they're there and the working class people are not there is because there were so many hurdles coming into the industry. And now you're seeing all of those girls who were in their 20s when I was doing this are now in their 30s and 40s now.
Ouch.
I've always been aware of publishing, sorry, Jen, as a very much an upper class thing. You know, as a poet, I was edited by people's daughters, so the daughter of the director of the Tate, and then the daughter of the Archbishop of Canterbury, and things like that. That's, you know, that's how it went. They were always young, and then I got older, like Policeman. You know, that there was another one, and another incredibly well connected. You know, very very bright, very smart, very lovely people. But an endless supply of them, and they were there because they lived in large houses in London, and they could bear it, and they could wear it. And I think that is a real publishing is an upper middle class profession, not middle class, upper middle class. And I don't think that that's significantly changed with diversity initiatives. I don't think it's made a big difference. So
presumably those people also have a stake in trying to attach themselves to other people's.
Then they get attached. So they attach themselves to. But how do you? I mean, I think one part of the impulse to cancel me was people. That was the summer of Karen. That was the summer of publishing lots of books about how all white women were Karen. And there were all these white women in publishing of that age. How do you prove you're not a Karen? Well, you hang a Karen. So they hung me. And I do think that was part of it. And I think proper diversity, as in proper diversity of background and proper diversity of points of view, would be great in publishing.
Yeah, I think that's really astute. Matthew?
No, I mean, I could see that a few years ago, the agency I used to work with, there's a company called Creative Access, and I'm sure they do really great work, but it's the idea to actually have more diversity in publishing, which is, was needed, particularly then. But you would look at the people who would be given the jobs, and they'd all been to Cambridge, and they were all, from, trust funds, and, it was no change, because class is just not interesting to many people in publishing anymore. I would say the only good thing is that there is a sort of growth of regional operations. So HarperCollins have a Harper North imprint. I think Hachette are trying to do more up north, and there's John Murray have a Bristol office, and that might make a difference with sort of making it not quite so London centric. So I think that there's been gains on that, but no one's talking about class. Someone's talking about what about the working, yeah, exactly.
One of the problems with my book, I think, is it very firmly said that class is the biggest problem in British education and poverty, and class is the biggest determinant, and that it's a bigger determinant than race. And I think that was, in anyone that had read my book, 2 or 3 of them that had, I think that was the irritant of it, that it constantly said that class was the problem.
That's really interesting. Right, I'm going to go to Jenny just to round things off, and then we can go to the bar. You can hang out here for quite a while, although it is a Monday night, so bear that in mind. I just wanted to say before I come to Jenny, just congratulations on the book. It is fantastic. I had a very, very enjoyable weekend reading that. Can I have it to wave around?
Yes.
Because it also looks beautiful, and she's got boxes, fully pursuing all the branding opportunities of the foxiness. So, Jenny, please close things off for us.
Gosh, that's a lot of pressure. Now, I mean, one of the brilliant things about being cancelled is I don't have any work tomorrow, so. So I'll have a large glass of Malbec. Thank you very much. I was going to try and address some of these questions, but the quiet cancellation, I'll just very quickly say it's a huge problem, and it's in my book. As a freelancer in the literary world, it's like, why you're not getting the invites, and my own bloody tax returns tell me I've been cancelled, even if people don't tell me on Twitter. It's really astonishing, the cowardice in the industry. But on that, just to round things off, I suppose. And in lieu of a large glass of Malbec, the one thing that stops the harm has been permanent when you get hounded is the company of courage. So thank you very much for having me and for being part of that.
Thanks, Jenny. And I think you're also speaking at the Battle of Ideas this coming weekend. And so if for some reason you don't manage to get a book tonight and you don't get it, or you don't get it signed, you can do that at the weekend. It's the Battle of Ideas Festival. Tickets on sale.
Yeah.
And Google it, you'll find it.
And do please buy my book in large quantities, because I have no income. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much to everybody in the room, and good night to everybody who joined us at home, and thank you for those excellent questions that we got from the Q&A. Good night, and we'll see you next time.